Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Heroes of the Storm is the game. And today I'm proposing a new build for the brand new hero, Li-Ming. She just hit the PTR, I've been playing her already, and having tons of fun, by the way. And this is a build I'm calling the Glass Laser build. Now you might be familiar with the term Glass Cannon, and in fact it even shows up in the talent tier here for Li-Ming at level 13. Glass Cannon is something that does a ton of damage, but is very easily destroyed itself, much like a literal physical glass cannon. Yeah, it can shoot cannonballs, but just a little rock thrown might break the whole thing, right? So this character very much symbolizes that mentality. You'll notice her health pool, level 20, is barely, or not even 2,300 health. Now that's a talent at level, or that's the Glass Cannon talent in action. It decreases her health by 15%. So she's very easily killed, but she does ridiculous, I mean totally crazy, absurd, the max damage in the game. This version of Li-Ming can pump out damage numbers like unlike anything you've ever seen. For instance, let's just see this one in action. That hit for, yeah, 1,500 damage. Just a base ability with a 10-second cooldown hit for 1,500 damage in a huge area, mind you, that's actually quite easy to hit. So that's nuts, right? That's the glass laser mentality, because a cannon really isn't enough for Li-Ming. It's really more like a laser, and in fact she even has a laser as part of this build. So the term is very fitting for this version of Li-Ming. So the idea with this build is really important. You have to play this version of Li-Ming in an incredibly safe and careful way and attack from very long range. You'll notice that all of her base abilities have very long ranges, and she also has a little bit of an escape with her E. It's very minor, but it's just enough. So this build is not for the faint of heart. This build requires incredibly good mechanical skills. You have to be able to hit your skill shots to make them count. It requires perfect positioning at every single moment. If you're one step out of position, you're totally doomed as this version of Li-Ming, because it takes nothing to kill you, right? It also actually requires a team composition and teammates who support this kind of playstyle. You need probably 2 tanks, a dedicated support, potentially even a secondary support like Tassadar that can offer some shields or fill in on healing, because you're going to be the target in this build. You're going to get focused down, you're going to get stunned, so you have to have the team there to support you. Now, not only heroes that support this playstyle, but actual teammates as well. The players themselves have to know what they're doing, they have to be ready to peel, they have to rely on you for damage. So if you're solo queue quick match, this is not the build for you. Forget it. You will die over and over again. You'll never succeed, because this build is really about momentum and getting kills, taking advantage of Li-Ming straight, firing off huge abilities over and over again from very long range. It's not set up for quick match very well. It's really not even set up for solo queue hero league, unless perhaps you're at the very top echelons, the high MMR rank 1 type stuff. If you try to play this at rank 20 or 30, your team won't be good enough to support you, but the enemy team will still be good enough to absolutely shred you, so it doesn't work. So you got to get the mechanical skills in place, you got to get the positioning perfect, you got to have the teammates there to support you, and then that's when the Glass Laser Li-Ming starts to shine. So let's take a look at the Glass Laser build. This will all start to make a little more sense as we go through each of the talents. Starting at level 1, Power Hungry, moving on to Charged Blast, Zai's Vengeance, Disintegrate, Glass Cannon, Arcane Orbit, and finally Towe Elements. So let's dive into these in a little bit more detail, starting off with level 1, Power Hungry. Regeneration Globes restore 100% more mana and grant 10% ability power for 20 seconds. So this build is really all about multiplicative damage bonuses. So this one offers 10% damage bonus on abilities. We've got some others that'll add 15%, 25%, so on and so forth, primarily on your Arcane Orb, but also just on various other abilities. So we want our damage being multiplied each time by 20%, by 15%, by so on and so forth, 10% here and there. So this really starts that chain of making our abilities do more and more damage. Now it only happens after you pick up a Regeneration Globe, but it does last for 20 seconds. So In late game scenarios, that shows up more often than you think. You go clear a minion wave, you grab a globe. There's a skirmish in lane, you got 10% extra ability damage. Say you're fighting Garden Terror, for instance. You know, they dropped the little purple globes. The enemy team shows up to contest, you blow them out of the sky thanks to the extra 10% damage bonus. So 10% might not sound like a lot at a base level, but when you see your W hitting for these huge amounts of damage that it does, right? No, we didn't even get to see it because the fort died. Let's see here. We're hitting for 987, and that wasn't even the max range, right? So that would have been worth 100 extra damage here if we'd had a regeneration globe. So across multiple abilities, with very short cooldowns that Li-Ming tends to have, that's a lot of extra damage. Plus, don't undervalue the 100% extra mana that this grants you when you pick up a regeneration globe. Early in the game, Li-Ming has such short cooldowns, like 3 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds on her teleport, that they're low-cost abilities, but casting them over and over again to pressure your lane means you're burning through mana. This allows you to sustain a little better in lane, start building up the momentum that makes Li-Ming so good, and gets you ready for objectives sooner. So you're in the fight longer early on, which is important. So this is good both early in a match, and it's a talent that's strong late in the games as well, making it pretty good. Plus, it just offers more damage potential than the rest of these abilities, which are more or less defensive or utility in nature. Moving on to level 4, we're going to choose Charged Blast. Basic attacking a target recently hit by magic missile does an extra 191 damage. So as far as this talent tier goes, there are some other abilities here, or talents here, which are pretty good, but they're really more focused on either defense or cooldown management or crowd control. This is the one that really allows you to pump out the most extra damage. So you'll see we've marked Arthas there with this nice little glyph to indicate. Now when we attack him, well, it got blocked, but it would have hit for significantly more damage. Her basic attacks don't do much on their own, but this does allow you to sneak in some extra damage now and then. Now that said, with Li-Ming late game, you don't always, or really even often with this Glass Laser build, want to be in auto attack range. Your team's going to have to be really pressuring and really dominant for you to ever step into auto attack range. So this is a talent that really benefits you more in the early to mid game, because once you hit level 13 and pick up Glass Cannon, it's so unsafe for you to ever really be in auto attack range unless you're trying to secure a kill or finish somebody off in a chase. That Charged Blast will lose some utility later in the game, but it's still good from time to time if you just need that one final killing blow, and 200 extra damage is what's going to provide it. Plus it adds up over the course of a game for a lot extra damage on the chart. So it's valuable despite the fact that it may not be as valuable later on. Moving on to level 7, Zai's Vengeance. Arcane Orb does more damage from afar. So Arcane Orb is our W, of course, and you can see its travel path here. It gets larger and does more damage as it gets farther away. So we saw it hit 1700 damage there at max range. The way this talent works is it does 25% additional damage when it's at the end of the travel path, but it does less damage when it's up close. Now, that might sound like a little bit of a downside. If somebody's right next to you, you'll note when we cast it very close, it really doesn't hit for much at all. And that's because it's taking that 25% penalty, right? It only hit for 363, which is not much at all. But this build's all about poking from far away. You don't want to be close. You want to be sending these things into the chaos of a team fight and a skirmish, right? You're trying to clip 1 or 2 people with a giant radius on this thing, as they're not really expecting that circle to continue growing. So the damage bonus for distant enemies is so much more vital than the damage penalty for close ones. So it allows you to do insane amounts of damage. Now Seeker is also a damage ability, but it's actually quite conditional. You have to hit magic missiles 3 times on the same enemy, which when they're far away, it's not too hard necessarily, but it's a skill shot that it has some travel time. It has a very tight focus point, so if you miss, you're gonna miss. Whereas Arcane Orb, it's so much bigger that it's easier to hit and easier to gain that benefit more regularly. So, plus, really, the benefit, I think, is even better for Zai's Vengeance than Seeker anyway. So, I prefer Zai's Vengeance to maximize my damage output in this build. Moving on to level 10, we're going to choose Disintegrate. Channel a powerful beam dealing 1169 damage over 2.5 seconds to enemies while they are in it. The direction of the beam changes with your mouse cursor position. So of course we had to get a laser for the Glass Laser Li-Ming build. And you can see it in action here. It moves quite smoothly. It's smoother than, say, Diablo's Lightning Breath, for instance. And you can see the damage numbers just firing off. Now, it actually doesn't last that long or do that much damage when you compare it to something like Arcane Orb. But it's a little easier to aim and focus in on an enemy because it's controllable, unlike Arcane Orb, which once it's out the door, it's gone. You can't move it. So it's good for finishing people off or singling out a really squishy target in the back line, perhaps, that you need to hit, or somebody that's being extra tricky to kill. So it offers you something a little bit different. Plus, there will be downtime, right? This is a 10-second cooldown. This is a 3-second cooldown. So if you cast magic missiles, you can actually get a Disintegrate off. Let's turn our cooldowns back on. If you cast magic missiles and then follow up with a Disintegrate, you've got time. Magic missiles is up almost immediately afterwards. So the duration for Disintegrate works well enough that you can cast an Arcane Orb, cast a missiles, cast a Disintegrate, and then your missiles are ready to go again. So it allows you to cycle pretty smoothly, and it doesn't really interrupt your damage output, even though I would argue it does less damage than some of your primary abilities. So it works nicely that way. Wave of Force is fine. But it's a little bit more utility and crowd control in nature, and we really just want max damage with this build. So, moving on to level 13, the talent that sort of gives this build its name, Glass Cannon. Increase your ability power by 15%. That's huge, by the way. That's enormous, especially with the 10% over here. But decreases your maximum health by 15%. So if you didn't know, Li-Ming has 2,700 health. Normally at level 20, this took it down to 2,300 health, which gives her the lowest health pool in the game, aside from like Murky and I guess some of the Lost Vikings. She dies to just like Blizzard, Jaina Blizzard. She dies to so many different things. Just a couple auto attacks from Butcher, she's dead. I guess 3 maybe. 3 or 4 auto attacks, she's gone. Any incidental damage is going to chop her health in half, so that's why this build is only for really skilled players who are very careful and precise in nature. But if you are that and you're in a team that supports you, man, you can blow people up. I actually want to get a regeneration globe so we can see the max damage that I didn't mean to reset that all the way. Where are my minions at? There we go. I want to see the max damage that Arcane Orb can pump out once you have a regeneration globe as well. Let's just go ahead and kill this guy back here. And then we'll fire a max range. Look at this here. 1,842 damage. That's almost Li-Ming's entire health pool from one basic ability. So you can see the potential that Glass Cannon provides, right? But again, just be careful with this talent. If you can't handle it, Cannoneer's a pretty decent ability, a pretty decent talent as well. In fact, it's actually quite good as long as you're playing in a different play style that allows you to be more aggressive and get an auto attack range. But Glass Cannon requires commitment, patience, and absolute and utter care. Moving on to level 16, we're picking Arcane Orbit. Your Arcane Orb travels 25% farther, doing up to 25% more damage. So this is yet another ability that is boosting the potential damage of Arcane Orb. It's really quite similar to Zai's Vengeance. It's basically a 25% buff if you hit something at max range. So when you're poking, you do stuff like that 1,842 damage that we happen to see. Even if you're not poking, even if you're in more moderate range, right, it's still hitting. There's 1,100 damage, which is perhaps the highest damage ability, basic ability in the game, even at mid-range, right? That's like a Falstad Heroic Lightning Beam, except it's a standard 10-second cooldown ability. So you can see the crazy power that Arcane Orbit and Zai's Vengeance and Arcane Orb have as a default nature. And then let's go ahead and move on to level 20 and wrap this up. Finally, we've got Towe Elements. Your abilities benefit from a 20% bonus damage as long as they aren't cast twice in a row. Now you'll see these golden little spiky crowns on top of our abilities. You might have been wondering what those are. Those appear when you select Towe Elements, and they let you know that you just cast W. So your Arcane Orb is not going to benefit from the 20% bonus damage. But as I described earlier, there are natural cooldown rotations in this build that ensure that you can actually rotate your abilities pretty effectively based on their natural cooldowns, at least the first couple times. Plus, this actually benefits from Critical Mass, which is Li-Ming's trait, which anytime she gets a takedown, all of her cooldowns are reset, so you can rotate even cleaner in a team fight if you're picking off 1 or 2 people. You can almost take advantage of this indefinitely, in a sense, because you've always also got your teleport to weave in, which does set up your magic missiles. So depending on your playstyle a little bit, you'll find the ideal rotation depending on the situation as well. You might have teleport when you didn't mean to, so it might throw things around a little bit. But basically, most of the time, you'll be benefiting from this extra 20% bonus damage. Now remember, we've got like 25% bonus here, 25% bonus here, 10% bonus here. That's why if you're maximizing everything at once, you've got your ability rotations down, you've got your globe, you're hitting at max distance, you can totally blow up the enemy team with a single ability or 2. So that's what makes this version of Li-Ming so devastating. You can sit in the back line, firing lasers, firing missiles, firing bombs, and decimating any opponents that happen to step in your way. So that is the Glass Laser Li-Ming build. One more time, that's Power Hungry, Charged Blast, Zai's Vengeance, Disintegrate, Glass Cannon, Arcane Orbit, and Towe Elements. So have fun with this build, but be careful. You will be destroyed or destroy. There's no other outcome. So thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the Glass Laser Li-Ming build. Have fun out there on the ranked ladder with this new hero. And until next time, game on.